like the trans community. All of a sudden, hey, I never gave an F about women. As a matter of fact, I actively work to legislate against them and take tax dollars away from women and programs that assist women. 1 in 3 women in this country are SA'd every single day. There's millions of unprocessed rape kits. But hey, if that means that we could get rid of more brown people, I suspect of having my money, even though they don't, because I can't do basic math, then all of a sudden I will pretend to care about women. Or, hey, I never cared about women, especially not women's sports, my entire life. But if it will help me demonize the trans community, all of a sudden, here I am to pretend I care about women. Well, thank God for math, statistical analysis. We know that women are being harmed. Programs that help women are defunded specifically by conservatives. Don't ever pretend that you care about women. It's mathematically impossible to claim that. And my last thing is, and if women, just because I know we're all trying not to be constantly unalived every single day, it's our goal. If we want to be safest, statistically, using math, we will move to a neighborhood of undocumented immigrants. That is where we are less likely to be assaulted. Statistically, when you use math.
Like you said, they will care about women when an immigrant unalives a woman. Then they'll get their fake outrage, their faux outrage.
It's not care. Happens. It's just like in service of demonizing brown people. When in fact, let me help statistically, right? How we fight crime is we do math. And we say, hey, this is prevalent here. And then we concentrate our tax dollars to lowering the prevalence of that crime in that community, right? We can never reduce instances of crime to zero. I'm not saying no undocumented immigrants have ever harmed a woman. I'm just saying I'm statistically less likely to be harmed amongst undocumented immigrants than I am against, say, white male Americans.
That's right. This is when they care.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs.
Yeah, that's when they care. That's when they care. Thank you, Reeb. Again, I want that last sentence again. The grant programs would sustain the biggest cuts under the proposed budget, more than $1 billion. The proposal calls some grantees radical and criticizes grants aimed at stopping violence against women. Mic drop. Key proposed changes: reduce the FBI budget by $554 million, which the White House says will help undo the, quote, weaponization of the FBI that pervaded the previous administration. The proposal says the FBI will focus resources in counterintelligence and counterterrorism while reducing DEI programs, pet projects of the former administration, and duplicative intelligence activities that are already effectively housed in other agencies. And they'll cut $468 million from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, and Explosives, which it criticizes for pushing policies that tightened gun control in recent years. So the gun violence epidemic, they want to cut agencies that are attempting to institute policies to help reduce firearm violence in our country. Okay, this is another big one. Everybody, please keep tapping and sharing. Let's see if we can get Felice to 5K before I'm done with this next section. And please continue to tap and share. And don't forget about subscribing at factsdon'tmatter.site. And Felice's pay apps and my pay apps are above her head. Thank you, friends. I have my hype girl. I miss it when you're not here, but I thank you for doing that. So I'm doing some hype for you. All right, Labor Department. 2025 budget, 13.3, a 35% cut from labor. Fascist organizations and fascist ideologies as corporate supremacy, suppression of labor. Think about tax cuts and think about the continuation, the extension of the Tax Cuts and Job Acts, more tax cuts for corporations, more tax cuts for billionaires, and then here we are, cuts to the Labor Department of 35%. Branded as Make America Skilled Again, the budget calls for cutting money to programs aimed at boosting employment among young people as well as seniors, arguing those efforts are hampered by, quote, progressive nonprofits or are duplicative of more effective programs run locally. Key changes: cut $1.64 billion in grants sent to states to develop employment and training opportunities for people after high school. So they criticize higher education, and yet they want to cut programs that would offer access to the trades, for example, for kids that don't want to go to college. Let's just cut it. We don't care. We're gonna make it so difficult for them to achieve. They're gonna be forced to go to work in the mines again, Felice. Remember the tiny hands of the little kids so they can get into the crevices where the coal is, right?
I don't believe I'll get into all the statistics, but this ties into our theme. Like, capitalism is economic narcissism, right? Like, when we talk about like malignant narcissism, where all three traits are present: psychopathy, Machiavellianism or /sadism, and psychopathy. I mean, and narcissism. Like, that's what we are talking about in corporate America. CEOs, the prevalence of psychopathy in the U.S. population is believed to be around 1%, and in C-suite level executives, it's between 3 and 3.5%. Like, you're now talking about, do you understand what you're seeing happen? You're talking about the consolidation of power through sadism, narcissism, and psychopathy, stealing from people that have nothing, taking what little is left.
Well said. Eliminate Job Corps, claiming it is ineffective at bolstering employment among youth and has been even at times harmful to them. The administration claims that it will save more than $1.58 billion, and cutting funding to the Senior Community Service Employment Program by $405 million. The administration says some SCSEP work is, quote, duplicative and not as effective as other programs run locally. So they say. NASA.
What was the last? Are we firing the elderly now? What was the last one?
We don't. Yeah, we're firing the elderly, and we don't want to provide any either job training and or additional incentives. If you're forced to have to work until you're 90, we don't want to give you any job training because of capitalism.
And here's the best part, MAGA: you have saved not one dime. We are going much further into debt for this, just
Correct.
as was projected when Kamala was running against Trump, and everyone that can do statistical analysis, Goldman Sachs, all these, dangerous people in the finance world, even said this will crash this budget will crash the economy. It will harm the average American. And just if you make less than $360K a year, you will be paying more in taxes. This budget does not include no tax on tips or no tax on overtime. As a matter of fact, Trump has made moves to make it so nobody will get paid overtime. I don't know if you know, he has till Tuesday, right? So, oh my God, it's Monday. Yeah, so till tomorrow. If he doesn't renew what Biden put in place, the minimum wage for companies, getting federal grant money, which was like,
Correct.
what, $17.50?
$17.50.
That is now going to go away as well. All he has done is harm you, give you less, take from you. And you're still like, any minute now, it's all going to work out for me.
So, Belly, when you're having conversations with Meemaw, and when you explain to her that her Social Security is going to get cut, she's not going to have Medicare and Medicaid access. And now, because she's going to have to work because she's losing her social safety net, there's going to be no job training for her because that's going to get cut too. So good luck with that conversation. Appreciate you. Cut funding to the senior.
Clinton lowered the deficit. Clinton balanced the budget. Actually, Joe Biden lowered the deficit. Just to be clear, Joe Biden lowered the deficit. Trump did not. Joe Biden lowered the deficit. Clinton actually balanced the budget. I don't actually love how he did it, though. I don't think they should use what we're paying in socials, to retire and balance the budget. That is what they did. And it was it was driven by Republicans in Congress, just to be clear, and Bill Clinton signed it. But no, that was the last time we had a surplus, Bill Clinton.
Yeah, his economic plan was to offer more tax cuts to the middle class, but I agree with you.
Clinton was a Republican.
Again, he's a Reagan Democrat, as they say. Plus, he took advantage of the tech sector. The boom of the tech sector at that time, so it was advantageous. But again, if you're in charge for 8 years, you got to give credit where credit's due. All right, NASA. Now, this is interesting. Now, everybody talks about conflict of interest. So there's a federal cut in the federal budget to NASA by about 24.5%. Agency oversees human space flight and space science in the United States. Trump has verbally endorsed travel to Mars, expressing frustration during his first administration that NASA was going to the moon, but not yet to Mars. terminate the costly Space Launch System rocket and Orion capsule after 2 moon missions, including 1 landing, add $1 billion for Mars-focused spaceflight efforts, cut NASA's science portfolio nearly in half, including killing the troubling Mars sample return mission. Felice, question for you. Do you know anyone who's talked about going to Mars? Do you know anyone who owns a rocket company? Do you know anybody who's got government contracts in those spaces, Felice?
Can't think of anyone besides the richest man on earth. We're cutting NASA like real scientific exploration, valuable things like patents, scientific patents. We were doing research on. NASA's created a lot of very lucrative patents for the U.S. that we've made a lot of money off of. And instead, we're going to let some wacko, the richest man in the world who needs no money from us, use our tax dollars. And just to be clear, as of today, which he's been trying to award himself more contracts, but $8 million every single day of your tax dollars goes to the richest man in the world.
Now, we always hope that people could just be objective.
Can we just get rid of that?
Right. Well, exactly. So I'd like for people to be objective. You want to talk about, corruption. So think about this. There's a 25% cut to the NASA budget. The person on Earth who stands to benefit the most from that is the person who's supposed to be cutting waste, fraud, and abuse from our government. Now, to be objective, you'd have to say, yeah, that's pretty shady shit. That's a little bit of corruption, I would say. But no, of course, you guys won't say that. Okay.
And we should mention that Trump is now petitioning. On Friday, he petitioned the Supreme Court because what we know is Doge did not save. They cut no waste, fraud, and abuse. They said 2 trillion, then it was 1 trillion. I don't know if you know the difference between 1 trillion and 150 billion, but that's significant. But I was just on doge.muskwatch.com. You can go there anytime. It's computer scientist and an independent journalist who's amazing auditing the Doge wall of receipts. It's actually at 60 something billion in itemized cuts as of now. I mean, if the rest are coming, whatever. And on the site right now, there's 155 billion in alleged cuts, but itemized cuts as of now, and that's including real estate, contracts, everything, is not even at 70 billion. So that's a lie. And then I went through another study. A think tank did a great study saying, let's say he does cut $150 billion, that they can already itemize, and it will be much more as this comes out, $135 billion that it has cost. So let's say he made it to 150 billion. And that's just the initial things that think tanks can pinpoint of the cost of the BS Elon Musk has done. So what has Elon Musk done? He's just stolen a bunch of data, right? And I mean, and I'm saying there's proof of large exfiltrations of data.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, and then on Friday, again, we see that they're suing. They're trying to get SCOTUS to allow more access for Elon Musk to the Social Security system.
They're basically suing the Supreme Court. Come on. We like you always say, we laugh so we don't cry. State Department, 83.7% cut to the budget, from $58 billion down to $9 billion. The State Department, the home of U.S. diplomacy and foreign policy, isolationism much, faces significant cuts under the proposed budget. The budget also assumes that it would assume control of programs that had been run by the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. We've talked about this many times, soft power and how important it is. In a prime example of global diplomacy, where you are sending humanitarian aid, food, water, medical supplies wrapped in a big old American flag. It gives you a soft power advantage, gives you deference to trade, gives you access to resources. That's been cut because apparently waste, fraud, and abuse. Now some of those responsibilities have been moved under the State Department, but yet they cut the budget by 83%. Okay. USAID, a separate body that dealt with foreign and humanitarian assistance before being dismantled early in Trump's second term. Key proposed changes: cut more than $8.3 billion to U.S. economic and development aid, which the administration said went to, quote, radical leftist priorities. Again, this is in the budget, you guys. I'm not paraphrasing.
I was just checking it was in here. Yeah, when they did this whole reorg of the State Department, like Marco Rubio, who's doing a great impression of a fascist. I don't know if this is real or I don't know what's happening in the little Marco, but yeah, a huge 8.3 billion. A lot of this, it's anything to do with women's health aid around the world. Yeah, it's sick. Yeah.
Again, this is from the budget. This is not
Tell me
just
again,
us.
conservatives, how you care about women. We're waiting for someone to request and explain.
Exactly. Again, went to radical leftist priorities, including climate change and DEI and LGBTQ plus activities. It also cuts more than $3.2 billion from disaster assistance funding. Okay. Take aim at U.S. support for international institutions, cutting $1.7 billion in most assessed and all voluntary contributions to the UN, including the WHO, World Health Organization, all U.S. funding for the UN and other peacekeeping missions. Some $1.6 billion is cut, while $690 million is cut from educational and cultural exchanges. This is an example of isolationism. This is kind of what they want. The American first in the mind of a fascist is literally to put a figurative wall around the country, which, by the way, led to the rise of the Reich in Germany. Similar policies. But again, history doesn't repeat. It certainly does rhyme. Increased funding for two programs. The first, U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, a pre-existing agency focused on private sector partnerships rather than foreign aid, would get a further $2.8 billion. We can talk about the Trump Hotel in Vietnam a little bit later. A new fund called the America First Opportunities Fund, or A1OF, would get $2.9 billion. This fund has a broad remit, including investment in nations like India and Jordan and funding reparations. Repatriations, leading some former officials to call it, quote, a slush fund for State Department spending not earmarked by Congress. Waste, fraud, and abuse much, right? Transportation gets a bump, 5.8% increase, up to $26.7 billion from $25 last year. The budget request calls for more money to fund the Federal Aviation Administration, which has been under the spotlight following the deadly January 29th crash between an airliner and an Army helicopter near Washington Reagan Airport. It also calls for some additional infrastructure building money, but most funding for roads, bridges, and transit falls outside the annual budget process. Remember,
Facts. Hold on. Stop the show. Jeffrey McDonald in the comments wants to know what your sources are. Jeffrey, we're reading Trump's budget.
The budget, my guy.
I get, we are reading Donald Trump's budget. I love and we know you have no idea what we're reading because you would have to be able to read and do basic math. So of course you believe we're making this up out of thin air. That makes, thank you for proving my point. Thank you. It's so embarrassing. How do you guys get up every day and survive?
Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son.
So anyway, it's the budget, my guy. Reminder that they cut all funding still that has yet to be allocated to the infrastructure bill, and now they are not going to replace that in the transportation budget. So all the money that was supposed to be allocated to help improve our infrastructure is gone. That's it.
And when they say FAA, understand this is one of the things that Elon Musk is trying to take over. He's already getting $8 million a day of taxpayer dollars. The richest man in the world is on the highest welfare rate. They're trying to take $65 a day from all our grandmas who need it to retire. Elon Musk gets $8 million a day in taxpayer money. That's before the new contracts, right? And this is one of the things he's trying to take over. He wants to use Starlink and other systems he owns and take over aircraft traffic control. Now you tell me, should the richest man in the world control the United States airspace and be able to shut it down? Like he's using Starlink for now? During wartime, threatening people to move Starlink satellites and during wartime and leave them without communication if they don't bend to his will. Do you think Elon Musk should control United States airspace.
What was the name of the? I'm trying to think of the name of it from the Terminator movie. Skynet. This is like fucking Skynet. Jeez. Okay. Key proposed changes in the Department of Transportation. Add $1.2 billion to the FAA, which I can support. Sure. I mean, I think air safety is a proven really good thing. It just depends on how we're spending the money. Money the administration says would be used to boost air traffic controller hiring and overhaul the technology used to direct aircraft. Depends on who gets the technology contracts, though, I guess, right? Add $770 million to fund major highways, ports, and rail projects. It also includes an extra $400 million for railroad safety projects, pointing to the fiery 2023 derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, that became a signature issue for Vice President J.D. Vance, and changes to the Essential Air Service, which subsidizes flights in remote areas, seeking a cut of $308 million. The program is popular among lawmakers and districts it serves, but the cost of the subsidies has made it a perennial target for cuts. Small airports, regional airports, people who are isolated already, forget it. You're going to have to walk. Meemaw, peepaw, listen, we know you don't get any time off from your job, but you're going to have to walk to the airport now because there's no more planes flying in and out of your neighborhood.
Well, and can I just add one thing to that?
Please.
Like, it is the lobbyist money. Like, I think MAGA, if we can all agree on anything ever, it is that we have to get money out of politics. This is what we know, right? If we are the allegedly number one gross domestic product in the world, a developed country, but we don't have high speed rail. If you think that the way to travel around America is paying for gasoline that's set by OPEC, a Saudi Arabian controlled committee called OPEC, or getting on airplanes, it's not, right? Developed countries, modern countries have high speed rail. We should have had high-speed rail a long time ago. With Wi-Fi, we should be able to work while going from city to city in bullet trains. That's the future. But the automotive lobby, the airplane lobby, the gas and oil lobby, they lobby people in Congress and government officials to stop us from forward progress. That is the reality. I'm not saying don't have a car. I'm saying it is ridiculous the way we travel. It is not efficient for us to be traveling on airplanes. It's ridiculous.
You've been to Europe, right, Felice?
Of course. And everywhere else, South America, even like the bus system in South America is more efficient to go country to country than it is what we have here.
Next to every autobahn or highway in Europe are rail. And they are high-speed rail in most cases. And I was thinking back to when we built out the auto industry. What a great opportunity it would have been at that time in our system to say, instead of reinvesting in SUVs and $50,000 gas guzzlers, why not invest in high-speed rail? Why not put the power of American manufacturing to work and develop a system of high-speed rail? Nope, can't do that because the lobbyists wouldn't like it. Period. And my daughter talked about the experience that she took taking the train
did you take the bus or train in Europe? Yes, Cody, that is how everybody travels in the rest of the world. Exactly. And and it scares me that you're asking that question like you believe rich people go from America who travel, go to other places. You don't rent cars. I can tell you've never left the United States.
It's true.
Just by the statements you're making. It shows a complete lack of knowledge about how the rest of it's not to say, hey, if I'm not traveling by car, I don't have money. No, it's actually the opposite. Everyone has a Euro pass.
Exactly.
It's one of the most efficient, convenient systems in the world. There's Wi-Fi. You just hang out on there. On some of them, you can, have a cocktail. I don't drink anymore, but back when I was, when I was moving around Europe, you don't understand what you're saying. High-speed rail is luxury. It's, hey, I can still work. I don't have to stop working. I don't have to drive. I don't have to pay insurance, ridiculous insurance prices. This is how the rest of the world travels. The developed world.
Exactly. Again, investments in infrastructure. Again, somebody pointed this out in the chat about part of the infrastructure, because we know that Joe Biden has a romantic interest in the train back when he used to take the train from Delaware to DC, and it became something as part of his life. So he made it a point in the infrastructure bill to say we need to make an investment in rail travel, because not only to expand and increase more, but because what we had was crumbling. That money's gone. Treasury Department, a reduction by 19%. This is the IRS, friends. Trump's budget generally left the Treasury Department alone, except for the IRS. The budget seeks to cut IRS funding by $2.5 billion. The agency has already frozen hiring, initiated broad-based layoffs, and paused a Biden-era technology modernization process under the direction of officials from, wait for it, DOGE. Cut $2.5 billion from the IRS, cut $291 million in grant programs, and add $100 million to the Rural Financial Award Program. Keep in mind, folks, when that right-wing talking point, when the Biden administration wanted to add, I think it was 8,000 or 80,000 IRS workers, that was to go after tax cheats. And that, again, we talked about investments, and Felice did a great job talking about this earlier. When you invest in things like that, you're looking for the ROI. So they invested and then recouped billions of dollars in tax cheats. They're not going after Meemaw and Peepaw for not declaring their new rocket scooter. They're going after the tax cheats, just like the CFPB, the Consumer Fraud Protection Bureau. Agencies like that who are under scrutiny, saying that they're waste, fraud, and abuse, like a 75 or an 80 or $100 million budget, and they recruit $5 billion in consumer fraud. So where's the ROI? So again, wanting to reduce the IRS. Why? So corporations can cheat more. I don't know how else you could explain it otherwise.
Well, and I'm going to just explain. Let me
Please,
just to add on that, because I'm passionate about this, because I want to alleviate everyone's fears. One of the ways MAGA has been so you just bought it hook, line, and sinker, was when Joe Biden's like, oh, we're going to invest in hiring, whatever it was, however many, 87,000 IRS agents. Just know that, unless you are making, and I'm talking 500,000 and up, and it depends on how your assets are structured. Our taxes are done. They're automated. There's no IRS agent that's like, hey, Felice makes $30K a year, talking on the internet, and we're going to get an IRS, a forensic accountant to audit her, because what forensic accountants cost for 1 hour of work is less than I owe, right? So there's automated systems that do 98% of our taxes. That's the reality. When they talk about hiring forensic accountants, auditors, and IRS agents, they're talking now about high-level tax audits, forensic audits of corporations and billionaires, right? Because then there is a return on investment. It's saying, hey, if someone who costs we're talking about billable hours similar to corporate law, so a forensic accountant that costs $600 an hour, if they spend 100 hours doing this audit, we're still going to make millions of dollars. And I went through the ROI. The average ROI is, as American citizens, for every dollar we invest in the IRS, we get on average $6 back. So it's a positive ROI, but that is actually a sliding scale, which I was trying to look it up real quick, and I have it somewhere in my many outlines I do every day. But when you get up to the 0.1%, that's what Trump is trying to prevent, right? They don't want, as billionaires and corporations, to be audited. For every dollar we invest in auditing billionaires, we get $16 back. That's where the ROI is. The real bodies, the forensic accountants at the IRS doing high-level audits, that is who they're focused on, and that is why billionaires don't want them to exist. That's how we bring in tax revenue. There's no point in going after me. It will cost, accountants will, after 2 hours, we've lost money. That's the reality.
Exactly. Let's do a little thought experiment. Another element of what you're describing here is when change to Joe Biden's policy about capping bank fees at $5 or $10 or whatever the number was. Who stands to benefit from those caps being cut? It's the banks that are ripping people off anyway. And it's not just banks in blue states. It's not just woke radical leftists that are getting bank charges. It's all of us. So what would be the point to do it other than to benefit the people that are doing it, right? Make it make sense. Make it make sense.
Like, to follow your line of logic, riddle me this. The only Elon Musk, as he's proved, he's now cost us more money than he saved doing this whole fake Doge thing. He just stole a bunch of our data to do God knows what with us. Right. Well, who were the real people that did that job? They were the inspector generals. The people that Trump, the first night of the long knives of Trump's second term, if Trump was really, really, truly wanting to root out waste, fraud, and abuse, why would you fire the actual qualified auditors, forensic auditors, that can root out waste, fraud, and abuse?
Because that makes too much sense, Felice.
Because they don't want to, right? I mean, we're now in a pay to play society that does not benefit the middle class, or, I can't remember who I was talking with. Maybe it was Matt. We're just like, there's no middle class. So we should stop saying that. There's the very wealthy, obscenely wealthy donor class and the rest of us, right?
The working poor.
Why would they destroy the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau? Like Facts is saying, why would they destroy the tiny agency that's such a small budget that would protect us against financial companies grifting off of us? Why would they take the only people that could do real audits to say, here's the waste, fraud, and abuse? The only real numbers, like I can tell you, I know, because Biden had it done. The Government Accountability Office, the Inspector General, they audited Social Security. 1% is fraud. Right? Which it's around 100 billion, but you have to understand there's like there's like a trillion, a trillion of money being doled out in the Social Security system. About 1% is fraud. There's a 2023 report that Biden had done. You can read it. Trump quotes it. The only real times Trump's quoting actual waste, fraud, and abuse is from the Inspector General that Biden requested a report.
Exactly.
If you cared, why would you fire him?
The independent bodies whose job is to investigate the things that Doge says that they're uncovering, period. And the only government agency that continually fails an audit is the Department of Defense. And we are increasing their budget. Make it make sense. Make it make sense.
Almost. Well, okay. You got to 200K. Keep tapping. You guys are doing an amazing job. These are our pay apps right here. If you would like to support us, please do. That's Fax's website at the very top of his screen. You can subscribe there. If I believe that's where he wants subscriptions. You can subscribe to me through my profile, but let's get to 300K. Thank you guys so much for being here on a Monday morning. I know it's a lot of information, but in general, like the idea that we're going, this is Trump's budget we're reading, the cuts he's making. All of this is cuts to average everyday people like us in order to try to pay for tax cuts. If you make less than $360,000 a year, you will be paying more in tax cuts. And that's I'm not even talking now about tariffs. So we're going to be paying, unless he stops, we're going to be paying every time we transact as well. So our theme today is capitalism is economic narcissism. And this is backed up by a study, but that's the point. Why are we consolidating wealth at the top of the economy when Trump said, this is America first?
Thank you, JC, for your $5 on Venmo. They said, thanks for doing this. Can you guys do this every day? Thank you for saying that, JC. I appreciate it. We really appreciate you guys. And like we always say, we collectively have the smartest chat on TikTok. I always say that I do, but I know a lot of your followers follow me.
And I think we have overlap. I will put the people watch the people's receipts of it. They're smarter than me. I'm dragging it down.
All right, we've got one more particular. These are the highest agencies, the ones with the biggest significant impact, and then I'm gonna hand the keys to Felice for this amazing breakdown of the specifics around economic narcissism. But we'll go through this, and we're going to talk briefly about budget reconciliation, what it means, and what the Republicans' goal here to try to get this shit passed. So this is the VA. The VA gets a bump; they get a 4% increase, but the administration proposed increasing overall spending at the Department of Veteran Affairs by about 4%, which would also include money for veterans who seek private medical care outside the government-run system. The move comes after the administration had already planned cuts to the VA's workforce and contracts, some of which were later reversed. During Trump's first term, he pushed to allow veterans to move their health care to private doctors and hospitals. The Trump administration said the proposed funding, along with money from $50 billion Toxic Exposure Fund, the TEF, will enable the country to provide world-class health care to veterans, though it did not acknowledge that the TEF was signed into law by President Biden. Key proposed changes: fund almost $2.2 billion to upgrade electronic medical records so they can be accessed anywhere they seek care. Fine, that's good. Cut nearly $500 million for what Trump administration says are outdated and duplicative information technology systems at the agency, and additional $37 million in cuts targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Anytime there's a cut in any of these agencies, it's always radical left ideologies and or DEI. So just to kind of summarize real quick, I'm going to go through this list real quick, and then we're going to talk about the budget reconciliation. Then we're going to talk about the specifics of economic narcissism. Agriculture Department is a cut. Commerce Department is a cut. Defense Department is an increase. Education Department is a cut. Energy Department is a cut. EPA is a cut by 54.5%. Department of Health and Human Services, a cut, 26.2%. Department of Homeland Security, increase by 65%. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, a cut by 43.6%. Interior Department, a cut by 30%. Justice Department, a cut by 7%. Labor Department, a cut by 35%. NASA, a cut by 24%. State Department, a cut by 84%. Transportation, an increase by 5.8%. Treasury Department, a cut 19%, and the VA an increase by 4.1%. Don't show me your values. Don't tell me your values. Show me your budget. So how then, do you ask, are the Republicans going to get this passed? Well, there's this thing called reconciliation. In politics, reconciliation refers to a special legislative process in the U.S. Congress, primarily used in the Senate, that allows a bill to pass with a simple majority, 51 votes, instead of the 60 votes needed to overcome a filibuster. It's a tool to expedite the passage of a certain budget-related legislation, particularly concerning taxes, spending, and the debt limit. Reconciliation is a way for Congress to quickly enact legislation on taxes, spending, and the debt limit with only a majority in the Senate bypassing the filibuster. Here's how it works. The process begins with a budget resolution that includes reconciliation directives instructing committees to make specific changes in spending, revenues, or the debt limit, which has happened in the House. These committees then draft legislation that addresses those directives. The legislation is then combined into a single reconciliation bill by the House and by the Senate budget committees. In the Senate, the reconciliation bill is considered under expedited procedures, limiting debate and amendments. The Senate can pass the bill with a simple majority as debate is limited and the filibuster cannot be invoked. Been used a few times, and I think this is interesting. Reconciliation has been used to pass significant legislation, including tax cuts. 2001, G.W. Bush. 2003, G.W. Bush. 2017, DJT. Also deficit reduction bills and the American Rescue Plan. The Congressional Budget Act limits the use of reconciliation to certain types of legislation, specifically those related to taxes, mandatory spending, and the debt limit. The Byrd Rule is a procedural rule in the Senate that limits what can be included in a reconciliation bill, ensuring that it doesn't stray too far from the budget's resolution instructions. The Republicans in Congress are attempting to use reconciliation so that Democrats do not have, or anybody in opposition to this, does not have a say. So attempting to avoid the filibuster by instituting the reconciliation so that it can pass with a simple majority.
And that's why, just to remind everyone, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just
you're good.
Like,
you're good.
Why, and I rarely, I rarely say we need to get rid of people. And I'm not saying people of New York, if you love Chuck Schumer, reelect him. He just can no longer be in leadership. Because we're now in this reconciliation process. And what Facts was telling you is, so it's outside of the ability of Democrats to filibuster, right?
Correct.
That's it. So this can just be forced through with a simple majority. We cannot filibuster. We cannot stop this essentially from happening. And the only time we've had as, the left in the minority in Congress, any leverage was when we could have shut the government down, right? And why should we have done that? I just want to remind you, now our economy is officially, it's not predicted to contract. It's actually contracting.
Correct.
Trump can lie all he wants. Trump inherited the envy of the G7. We had recovered the best in the G7 from the pandemic, and all prospects were this economy is going to expand, right? The gross GDP will grow. Jobs will be created. And as a result of Trump's own decisions, which in my opinion are to clamp down on power and punish people who don't bend to his will, the actual GDP has contracted. The size of our economy is now contracting. Trump inherited a bull market. That means good if you don't understand the market. Now we have a bear market, right? And this is not, I love when I hear MAGA just be like, Joe Biden ruined my life. No, a pandemic hurt you. And because you can't read or make sense of basic information, for some reason, Trump told you to blame that on a person who did everything the right way to recover from that, and yet you still blame that on him. There was no worldwide pandemic. We weren't locked in our houses. By all accounts, what I thought and the rest of the world thought was Trump was just going to take credit for Biden's economy, and we were all going to have to sit here and pretend he did that. None of this. Could have
just gone and played golf. He could have just gone and played golf.
And that's part of the budget you missed. Just so you know, in this budget, $300+ million is allocated for Trump's golfing.
That's
Trump
right.
has golfed more and taken more vacations than I believe any other president in history in his first 100 days. While he unprovoked, there was no emergency, none of this needed to happen, drove our economy into the ground.
And keep this in mind, too, before we get into, I'm going to hand the keys to Felice on the next topic, and we'll go through this piece together because it's crazy shit that she did. You guys can all appreciate the work that she did for you by gifting her and contributing to her pay apps, please. The Obama economy, we were booming. And Trump took credit for the Obama economy. And now here we are. The stock market is in the shitter, and our economy is contracting as we march toward our warning signs that a recession is coming. And of course, it's what about Biden? It's Biden's fault. So make up your mind. It's one or the other. If you are in charge, then you are in charge. If you're going to take credit for the good, then you got to take blame for the bad. But no, he's not willing to do that. Okay, so that's our exercise.
Can I opine on that? So I want to help you, MAGA, because I'm following your logic, MAGA logic. I just want to help you understand what Facts just told you. Facts just said, you guys are giant, uneducated hypocrites. And let me explain to you what he means by that. Did the worldwide pandemic that nobody could start with Obama? Absolutely not. It started during Trump's term, right? Mm-hmm.
Correct.
That's when the pandemic started. And the day Biden got into office, you said, this is Biden's economy, blame Biden, even though the worldwide pandemic was not Trump's fault, and it certainly wasn't Biden's fault. But the minute that Biden sat in the White House and was confirmed and swore an oath, you blamed every single economic hardship you had on Joe Biden. So what I'm asking you to do is use your own logic. Don't use my sound genius logic. Use your own. By your own logic that you held Joe Biden to, the day Donald Trump got into office, he was responsible for this economy, which was an amazing economy. He inherited a bull market. All signs were go. This economy is about to expand. Manufacturing was projected to come back. And for whatever reason, which I think is a consolidation of power, he cratered that. Ballistic podiatry, shot himself in the foot, shot you in the foot. And I'm saying, don't believe me. I'm just asking you to follow your own line of logic. And if you don't want to do that, then you're a hypocrite.
And keep in mind, before we get into our specific topic, keep in mind, we were marching towards a bit of a manufacturing recession in 2019 based on tariffs, based on the similar type of economic policies. We were losing manufacturing jobs. We had, you can really look at the housing costs starting to spike under Trump in 2019, specifically because of lumber and steel tariffs on Canada. Shocker. And we were losing domestic manufacturers, Harley Davidson, Carrier, air conditioning, and others. COVID almost saved Trump from that economic doom and gloom. And here we are again. So again, to Felice's point, just apply the same logic, please. We're just asking you to be objective. I know that's hard. Okay.
Or you're in cognitive dissonance and a giant hypocrite.
Exactly.
You can choose. I mean, we all know which one it is.
So I think examples of the budget would apply to what it is that we're talking about here. Making sure that the people in power accumulate more power. The people who have wealth have the ability to accumulate more wealth at the expense of middle class families, the working poor, the environment, clean air, clean water, Mima and Peepaw, things like that. So let's get into the economic narcissism, Felice, the specifics around it, because I know you've been studying this. This is good shit, everybody, so buckle up.
Yeah, okay. So as we know, I'm big on research. I love to read. I'm big on psychological studies. So I put this in my Discord. It's in the general chat and I added everyone. So if you get notifications in my Discord, then the study is there. I just, gosh, you know how I am when I teach. I might go through just a basic thing in my live later.
Do it.
Which, by the way, if you don't know, the People's Receipts is at 11:30 Pacific time, 2:30 Eastern. But this, this study that I'm reading off is called Group Narcissism, a Disease of Capitalism. Okay. So, and it's a thesis study that was done by, a man named Peter Murphy and other supporting authors. But I just want and again, I put it in my Discord and I sent it to everyone. So if you get notifications in case you want to take a look at it, it is fascinating. And this is just scientific stuff. So what I'm showing you now is that as capitalism developed, capitalism is group narcissism, right? It's economic narcissism. And I want to just give you a few examples of when I say that, right? Like capitalism as compared to narcissism, entitlement and self-importance. Capitalism often rewards those who are ambitious, competitive, and self-promoting, potentially leading to a sense of entitlement and a belief in one's own superiority, lack of empathy. The emphasis on individual success and profit within capitalism can discourage empathy and concern for others as the focus shifts towards personal gain, right? As we develop capitalism as a strategy, especially in America.
Breaking news. You need to watch.
Sorry.
When we developed the advent of neoliberalism, which people hear the words neoliberalism and they think, oh, those liberals. No, this is not that. Neoliberalism is something brought on by conservatives, right? It has to do with moves away from social, the collective whole, and privatization, capitalistic monopolies, right? Like a move away from single entrepreneurial small business to capitalistic monopoly and people selling their life force to corporations for the right to go to the doctor, right? That's what we're talking about. Another example, when we compare narcissism to capitalism, exploitation, right? We talk about this all the time. One of the major onsets, Margaret Thatcher is if you understand, Margaret Thatcher is one of the grossest people to ever run England. She's like the quintessential conservative neoliberal. And this is, that's what it is. It's the capitalistic system can involve exploitation of labor, right? And that's one thing I talk about all the time when I try to explain to people globalism, which I love how MAGA, because you would have to learn. You got to stop them from defunding education because you guys have no idea what you're talking about. Globalism was a conservative idea born of neoliberalism, right? And you know why globalism came about. Why did we have to offshore manufacturing in America? It's because Americans started to say, hey, I have rights. I would like bathroom breaks. I would like a living wage. I would
Weekends
like
off.
I would like to not lose a hand or a finger in a factory. I would like weekends. Weekends were the 5-week work week was a development of labor rights, right? And globalism was this understanding of, as America modernizes, as people in America are demanding labor rights, what we need to do is go exploit labor in other places. Not just exploit labor in other places, but we need to exploit the resources in third world countries. So then we developed what we call trade triads, right? We will take the minerals out from under indigenous peoples in third world countries, right? Then we will move them to a place where the cheapest labor or slave labor is still legal. And then America will become the global market, right? Americans will essentially consume. Understand that the onset of neoliberalism, of conservatives saying, we need to seek out the cheapest labor. We need to exploit people. Americans don't seem to have the appetite for it. Let's offshore manufacturing. Yeah, it's almost as if MAGA doesn't understand corporations. I agree. Who said that? That's a good comment. Sorry. What did you say?
Right. So just as a reminder, some of the tenets of fascism: corporate powers protected. The industrial and business aristocracy of a fascist nation often are the ones who put the government leaders into power, creating a mutual beneficial business-government relationship and power elite. Think about the people in Trump's cabinet. Howard Nutlick, for example. Labor power suppressed because the organizing power of labor is the only real threat to a fascist government. Labor unions are either eliminated entirely or severely suppressed.
Exactly. And this study, if you look into and read it, it's not that long. It's probably about 25 pages. And we'll get into fascism was studied. I just want to cover these kind of general things, and then I'm going to get into some really scary. And then I'll get into the really disturbing stuff that will keep you up at night. I'm not even, wish I was kidding. Keep tapping the screen. Let's get facts to 300K. So the self-devouring society, that's another name for capitalistic society. Some critics argue that capitalism's relentless drive for growth and consumption leads to a self-destructive cycle where individuals are constantly encouraged to consume and compete, ultimately leading to a society of narcissists. And finally, cultural influence, right? Capitalism can also shape, as it has, which I can make this argument, and many psychiatrists and psychologists and sociologists have, as well as anthropologists. Capitalism can also shape cultural values, promoting individualism over the collective, consumerism, and the pursuit of material excess, which reinforce narcissistic tendencies. I was thinking of the best way to get into this and I want to this study is actually brilliant. And I encourage like we said, Facts is right. There's brainiacs in here who love to read. If you want to understand the presence of the dark triad, right? Machiavellianism / sadism, psychopathy, and group narcissism in American society. This is a study there's hundreds of studies you can look into, but this one really, really lays it out. And what I want to talk about is World War II and the Nuremberg trials. I kind of touched on it. And actually, I'm not sure how much of this clip I'm going to play. And I never recommend people, I don't even know if I want to say his name because I don't recommend giving actual narcissist supply. But one of the foremost psychologists in the world and people that write around malignant narcissism, he is in fact a narcissist. His name is Sam Vaknin. You can look him up. Don't encourage him though, but he is pretty brilliant. And it's funny because I found this clip. I followed him for a while because I talk about it all the time. I was raised by a malignant narcissist. So I want to a long time ago started doing a lot of research to understand like, who was I raised by and how do I combat, the pathology that I'm being faced with? And one of the most fascinating things to learn, and this is what the Nuremberg trials, Nuremberg was where schmazzies were on trial for their crimes. There were resident psychiatrists and psychologists who were studying the phenomenon of what had happened with Hitler and schmazzies and writing papers on it, developing a whole theories around what had happened. And that's Freud, when you hear the term group narcissism and stuff, this is when it was started to develop. Group narcissism became synonymous with something that I love. This is how I know MAGA's in cognitive dissonance. And it's so ironic you read the word fascism, because that is what it is. But I probably won't play this whole clip because it's a little long, but I want you to understand that Hitler, right? He was diagnosed as a malignant narcissist. There are many people, including Mary Trump. Who is Mary Trump to? She's a psychologist, but is it his sis? It's not his sister. It's his niece.
Niece. Niece.
Yeah, she's a psychologist. There are many psychologists and psychiatrists that have diagnosed Trump, from a distance with malignant narcissism. And what I want you to understand is malignant narcissism.
One second. Can you imagine him sitting on the couch and talking about all his shit? While
they can't. They can't. Unless it was to manipulate the person who.
Sorry,
it would only be from a manipulative stance. I mean, there's a complete lack of empathy. But this is what I want you to understand. There are people who have just narcissistic style, which is what we would consider narcissistic traits, which are now, and this is the argument of the study I'm talking about, prevalent in society. When you wonder, we've had a week of accountability and a lot of things going on TikTok where people on the left, creators, have been called out for toxic narcissistic behaviors that have harmed women, particularly women in minority groups. Mm-hmm. And I have heard a lot of people in comments saying, how could this happen? Well, that is why I'm doing this. I want to explain to you how it happens. And malignant narcissism is a specific type of narcissism. It is the prevalence simultaneously of narcissism, narcissistic personality disorder, psychopathy, and Machiavellian sadism all at once, living harmoniously in an individual. This is what Fromm, one of the leading psychologists/psychiatrists in the world, who was present at the Nuremberg trials, identified was present in people like Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, all of the people that you've heard Trump say that he admires. And so I just want to play a couple minutes. Again, this is Sam Vaknin, but he is a diagnosed person with narcissistic personality disorder. I don't suggest seeking him out and being supply for him. If you don't know what that means, look it up.
The most dangerous type of narcissist, what I mean by far, is far more dangerous than psychopath. Far more dangerous than narcissist. It's this malignant narcissist. This is known as malignant narcissism. Or psychopathic narcissist, antisocial narcissist, is probably the most dangerous person alive. I am not aware of any other disorder which is more dangerous than this. Not sadism, not psychosis, no. This is the most dangerous. Why? Because it combines all the extremely bad elements of narcissism with all the tools of the psychopath. So while the malignant narcissist is actually a narcissist, he has a false self, he has a fantasy, and so on and so forth, he will not use typical narcissistic tools and techniques, which are the tools and techniques of a child. A typical narcissist is a child, is a baby, is 2 years old, 3 years old. So, it's funny sometimes. You look at the narcissist, you smile. It's like a baby who's doing cute things.
And actually, I think I'm just going to explain this because sometimes he waxes poetic. Exactly. And this is when he says they're childlike, what does he mean? Underneath a person, and I'm talking about a small percentage of the population, not someone who through group narcissism has been trained to display narcissistic traits. I'm talking about someone who has narcissistic personality disorder and lacks empathy. What is that person? They're a toddler, right? They're an infant underneath, right? They were denied their primary attachment, their mother, and as a result developed a defense system against that. Narcissism is a defense, right? That's what it is. It's a set of survival skills that they're employing. But what I'm saying about malignant narcissists like Hitler and like many psychologists have identified Trump is that they're not just they are actually employing sadistic Machiavellian techniques. They're employing psychopathy and they're employing malignant narcissism or narcissism all at once. Narcissism, when we start talking about group narcissism and like, how do creators on the left fool people, right? It's a shared fantasy, right? People with narcissistic personality disorder, they lack empathy and they draw people into a shared fantasy, right? That's what Hitler was doing. His shared fantasy was, there are these people who we need to get rid of. They're hurting us, right? It was a shared fantasy that not just Hitler was in, but the rest of the people of Germany joined him in this belief, right? Hey, it's us against them. We have to do something about this. But in addition to that shared fantasy that he was projecting, right? He was a psychopath who's saying, hey, like, I'm gonna, I could tell you the nature of psychopaths. I'm not gonna get into it. And then also a sadist, which, hey, just because you believe you could be a narcissist who says, hey, I'm in a shared fantasy with the rest of Germany. I believe we need to get rid of these people, but do you need to do that in a sadistic, torturous way? No. That's the Machiavellian sadist, right? Like, these are the elements of a malignant narcissist that are now, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I just am a researcher who's read thousands of studies, but many psychiatrists and psychologists have identified Trump as a malignant narcissist. So I want you to understand, MAGA is in a shared fantasy with Donald Trump, a shared fantasy that not Trump and billionaires are robbing us, which, hey, basic math, follow the money. Like, it's super simple. I can tell you who's robbing us. It's not